Today, I finally got to do an interview that I've been wanting to do for 10 long years. I got to interview Cameron Herold, who I met a decade ago for a short while at a conference, and I've been meaning to ask him a bunch of questions ever since, and today was the day when I got to do it. The conversation went into many unexpected directions. You should definitely listen to Cameron. He is a giant in the world of business. His philosophies on life are amazing. In the short 15 minutes or so that he and I got to talk, I learned incredibly powerful insights from him. And as you're listening to this episode, I hope you're not driving. Or if you are driving, listen to it and then re-listen to it with a pen and paper in hand. Some of the ideas that he shares are absolutely life-changing. Enjoy the show. A little preview. Cameron built a business that everyone in North America has heard of. 1-800-GOT-JUNK. From $2 million when he joined the company, there were 14 employees, to $106 million when he was asked to leave for the right reason. He'll tell you that story. Cameron has coached a few very successful law firm owners, one of whom I got to know, and I know now how they grew their business nearly tenfold in short 6 years. The insights are absolutely mind-blowing. Enjoy the episode and take notes. Hi there. I have a small but really meaningful favor to ask you. I watch at the stats on our YouTube channel and Spotify channel, wherever most people listen and watch our podcast, and I see that over 80% of everybody who listens to it regularly is not a subscriber. I'm asking you to subscribe to this channel, and the reason for that is my mission, and the mission of my team is to help as many small law firm owners to learn how to transform their law firms into better businesses, and so they in turn enjoy better lives. When you hit subscribe button, you tell these platforms that this is content worth listening, worth viewing, and they in turn will show it to many other small law firm owners, and hopefully help me fulfill our mission of helping them create a better business and enjoy better lives. So would you please do me this favor? It would mean the world to me, and hit the subscribe button. And my promise to you is that I will continue to work hard at creating good content with practical ideas that help you and your teams grow better law firms. Thank you. Cameron, I follow you. I know your content. I read your book through and through 2 or 3 times over the past decade. I'm curious. I have a few subjects that I put down on paper that we could talk about during the podcast. But is there anything that you would like to talk to? And let me preface this by saying that the audience of this podcast are law firm owners. Most of them are hungry for growth. They want better out of life. Some of them may have bucket lists and they're not getting there, but they see their peers, not necessarily better lawyers, but their peers who have done better financially, significantly better financially. And they're looking at this guy like, why the fuck? This bozo is there and I'm not.
Well, yeah, I'm willing to, I can go anywhere you want. And by the way, I think you're also welcome to use any of the content of what we just talked about on the podcast too. I mean, I think there's some really good sound bites in there. You can use the whole part of it, whatever you want, because there's some really good stuff that I think is important to people. Because at the end of the day, none of this matters, right? Whatever we're doing to make money is just what we do to make money. That's not really our reason for being. So I think, I'll tell you one of the things I've observed, and I've actually worked behind the scenes coaching the CEOs of 4 or 5 or 6 different law firms. I've coached Seth Bader from Bader Scott. I've coached George Sink. I've coached John Barry, coached Jason Hennessy from Hennessy Digital. I coached William Matar. I'm going to be missing a couple, and I'm disappointed I can't remember. But anyway, I've coached about 6 of them in the legal space, and they're the same as any other entrepreneur, right? Whether you're running a law firm or a chain of dental practices or a chain of auto body shops or restaurants, it doesn't matter. That's merely your product. You're still an entrepreneur. And the only reason we start a business is to either have the feeling of accomplishment, right? To put the stake in the ground or a flag in the ground to go, I did something. And then to give us money. And at some point you have enough money, right? You either hit an economic free zone that you're not going to be able to spend the money that you have, or you don't really need more things. So you're not doing it to make money anymore. And then the last is for free time. And I think often entrepreneurs forget to actually stay connected with their hobbies and with their bucket lists and with their passions, and let the business help them have a better life and a more enjoyable life. And what they end up doing is spending all their time running the business, and they say, business is my hobby. Well, then I don't want to hear about your hobby, right? I don't want to hear a lawyer talk about law. I don't want to hear a dentist talk about dentistry. I don't want to hear a doctor talk about surgery. I don't want to hear an accountant talk about accounting. I don't want to hear an auto body guy talk about auto body. Nobody wants to hear about your hobby if it's your business. What we want to hear about is your hobbies. And one of the best ways to build a better law firm is to actually have hobbies, to have passions, to have a really good life and good relationships with your spouse and your kids and yourself. So it forces you to delegate everything except genius. It forces you to delegate all the stuff that you're not good at and that drains you of energy so that you can have all that free time. And because you're having a better life, because you're inspired, because you're showing up with energy, because you're doing all this cool stuff, it inspires the people around you. You're showing up with really good energy. That energy creates more energy, right? So it's almost like becoming the lazy lawyer, not the lazy one that just sits on his chair and watches TV all day, but the lazy lawyer who doesn't work and who does all the other things. That's actually going to help you build a better law firm. And I've seen that. Look at Richard Branson as an example, right? One of my favorite quotes of Richard Branson, somebody asked him when the last time he went to a grocery store, and he thought about it for a while, and he said, I don't think I've ever been to a grocery store. And in his mind, he's like, why would I go to a grocery store? I'll delegate that to somebody to go and get me what we need or to make me healthy food. But like, why would I spend my time doing something that isn't super exciting and is below my effective hourly rate? And why can't I free up my time to go kiteboarding and play tennis and go cycling and spend time with friends and enjoy my music and enjoy my hobbies and work in the business on the stuff that fires me up? And I think so often business people lose sight of that. I certainly did. I burned out massively years ago.
Very, very interesting. By the way, one of the folks who was on this podcast just a few days ago was Louis Scott, who was Seth Bader's partner.
Right, Seth Bader's partner. Sure, Bader's. Yeah. Louis used to be a member of our COO Alliance. He now runs his business called 8-Figure Firm, I think now. Spot on. Yeah. Louis is a great guy.
Yeah, great guy. Very, very smart. Very successful. So
I used to coach him.
You used to coach him?
Yeah, I coached Seth and Luis for about 18 months. And then Luis was a member of the COO Alliance when he was the COO for Bader Scott. So yeah, I coached them for about 18 months.
I can see why they grew so quickly. They went from 5 million, 50 million, 40 million in about 6 years. That is a very, very, very typical growth curve for a law firm.
Well, they did a couple things really, really well. They focused on a really good brand. They focused on really good connections with people. They really worked at growing their people. You know, like they were getting coaching. Luis was getting coaching. Luis was in a mastermind. Their team were going through my Invest in Your Leaders training. Like they were good at stuff that scales up a business. I think they cared more about the people and the systems than they did about law, right? Like they were always talking about building a better business. They were always talking about, and it wasn't even to make money. It was to serve more clients and you know, it was the game. They liked playing the game. And those are two extraordinarily different. They're very prototypical of the CEO, COO. Seth Bader is very bipolar, very manic, very ADD, very scattered. He's all over the place. He's a visionary.
He's the CEO.
He's the CEO, right? He's the vision. And then Louis Scott was the very operational, very buttoned down, very organized, very systematic, very pragmatic. He's the integrator. It's almost like men are from Mars, women are from Venus, right? Men are not hairy versions of women. We see the world differently. We perceive the world differently. We approach problems differently. We communicate differently. The CEO and COO approach the business differently. They see the business differently. They approach situations in the business differently. And you need to have that real yin and yang, I think, to grow any good firm. Almost every single law firm that I've ever worked behind the scenes with has had a very strong COO relationship with their CEO.
So people, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to record separately an intro to this episode, and everything that we talked about, we're just going to use it as an episode because you're dropping so many nuggets of wisdom. It's amazing.
Yeah.
To people who are watching this, these are smaller law firm owners. Most of them are between $2 million and $10 million in revenue. They
Okay.
didn't go to a business school. Many of them will not know the difference between CEO and COO. Can you help us define those two roles?
So I did my undergraduate degree in law. I have one of the only I have a bachelor's degree with a law major in Canada. I can't practice law, but I did all the normal law courses. And all the other courses I did in university were business courses. I think that every law school in North America should be charged with malpractice for allowing any lawyer to go out and start a law firm without teaching them how to run a bloody business. They don't get any training. No one trains them on how to build teams and how to run meetings and how to do strategy and how to set a vision and how to build a company culture and how to fire the wrong people and how to lead and coach and develop and train, delegate and manage projects. They don't teach any of that. And then they go, okay, go join a law, go start a law. Like, are you crazy? And the same with doctors and dentists and chiropractors. I talked to a friend who went through 7 years of dentistry and he got 1 hour of business training and no finance or accounting training. And they said, go start your own firm. That's obscene. Okay, so your question. They don't know the difference often between the CEO and the COO. The CEO is the lead person in the company who's in charge of vision, culture, the direction of the company, usually kind of sets the parameters for the core values that we're going to live within. And then the second in command, whether it's a COO or a vice president of operations or a director of operations, or in the early days, maybe just a key person that works with you, is the person that helps you make your dreams come true. The COO helps the CEO's dreams become a reality.
I believe that everyone who is listening to this right now and they're the CEO of their law firm, they're like, this would be a dream come true.
Right.
If I had a strong business operator who would help me materialize all of my ideas and goals.
Well, where a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of lawyers get stuck is they worry about paying. Let's say you're going to have to pay $240,000 a year to have a good second in command, a good vice president of operations, or a COO, and you're worried about $240,000. First off, you're not paying $240,000 tomorrow. It's probably about $20,000 a month for 12 months. And it's not even really $20,000 you have to worry about, because the first payroll period is only going to be $10,000. So it's really $10,000 you got to think about. If you had a solid person in your business to take stuff off your plate that you suck at, or that drains you of energy, or to free up time for you to do the stuff that you love to do, could you make $10,000 more in gross margin? Yeah, probably. Or could they help you make that? Probably. So if you set the person up for success and you onboard them into your culture, indoctrinate them into your culture, give them some training to help them understand the whole business, they're going to be able to start paying for themselves in the first or second month. So I think often we get tripped up with the big $240,000 number instead of realizing that they're going to be paying for themselves quite quickly.
Yeah,
on the second part of that is you're also going to wake up in the morning and like your life a lot more than you do today. Right? Like,
valuable.
Why as a lawyer do you want to make $700,000 a year and hate your life and not spend time with your wife and not spend time with your kids and not have any hobbies? Maybe if you were only making $500,000 a year, you'd be way happier.
It's an amazing point.
By the way, I was coaching somebody around 15 years ago with my sister. And my sister called me up in tears one day. And I said, what's wrong? She goes, I don't want to keep building my business. And I said, what do you want to do? And she said, my kids are 12, 10, and 8. I want to spend time with my kids before they're adults. And I said, why don't you hire someone to do your job and then spend time with your kids until they're adults? And she said, it would take 3 people to do what I do. And I said, well, how much money did you make in profit last year? She said, 1.4 million. And I said, then why don't you hire 3 people at $150,000 each 15 years ago? And then instead of making 1.4 million, you're now making 950,000, but you got 3 people to do your job. You can go in Monday and Thursday for 3 hours each day and coach them and train them and pay bills and set the direction and then get the heck out of their way. So she did that for almost 8 years. And then she stepped back into the business when her youngest was in second or third year university, and her business was growing the entire time that she had moved away. Her business grew because she wasn't in the way, because she delegated and empowered people and grew people. There's an old coaching mentality or methodology that you ask the person the question. You said, what would you do if you found out that your mother was on dialysis and had to be in hospital 6-8 hours a day, and you wanted to be in the hospital with her, and you only had 2 hours a day to work? What would you do in those 2 hours? And the entrepreneur usually gives you 3 or 4 things they would do with those 2 hours a day.
That's it.
Then you say, then do those things and delegate everything else. Hire a couple people to do that. I think entrepreneurial lawyers, if they do that, will scale. That's what Brian at 1-800-GOT-JUNK did with me. He couldn't afford me, but he couldn't afford not to have me. So he brought me into 1-800-GOT-JUNK as employee number 14, and I helped him take the company from 2 million to 106 million in 6 years, because I'd already done it 3 times before.
That's a fascinating story. And this was when you were in your mid.
Yeah, I joined when I was 35 and I left when I was 42. I left 18 years ago. I still talk about it. I still talk about it like it was yesterday.
Everybody knows 1-800-GOT-JUNK. If you live in North America, you know what 1-800-GOT-JUNK company is. But why did you leave?
He fired me.
He fired you?
Yeah, my best friend. So no, he didn't fire me because I did anything wrong. We sat down for breakfast an hour before our leadership team meeting, and he said, I think it's over. And I started to cry, and he started to cry. And actually, he ordered grapefruit, and I ordered eggs Benedict. I said, "What are you doing ordering grapefruit?" And then he said, "I think it's over." I'm like, "You've never ordered grapefruit in your whole life." He said, "You were the right guy to take us from 2 million to 100 million, but you're the wrong guy to take us from 100 million to the billion." And he needed a more detailed, strategic, corporate kind of COO, and I was a very entrepreneurial. He and I were like nitroglycerin. We blew it up. Right. But that's dangerous when you have 13 operating P&Ls, 3,100 employees system wide, operating in 330 cities, 46 states, 4 countries. You can't be that entrepreneurial anymore. So their new COO took them from, after I left, it went down to 70 million from 106 during the global financial crisis. And then Eric came in as their COO, and he took them from 70 up to about 900 million. And he would have been a horrible COO for the early days because he wasn't entrepreneurial. He and I have been friends since 1987. We started a fraternity together in Ottawa, Canada. I was president for year 1. He was president year 2. And now he's their COO for the last 14 years. But yeah, he's a perfect match to take them to the billion, but he would have been a horrible COO for the early days. So that's why I left, is Brian asked me to go.
Did you agree with his decision back then?
Yes. I knew it was the right decision. It was done in the wrong way, but it was definitely the right decision. Yeah. He got bad advice from the board on the board told him to do it and not let me come back to work. And it was a weird,
it was a
strange cut. Yeah. It wasn't well done. So I went in a week later and said goodbye to the team, and, but it was definitely the right decision. It just wasn't handled in the right way. But he and I are still friends to this day.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So we went over the difference between CEO and COO. And I think on your website.
By the way, I talked about that in my book, The Second in Command. In the final chapter of the book, The Second in Command, I called it The Party's Over. And it's what do you do when you have a senior person that's helped you get to where you are, and they're not the right one to go to the next stage, right? It's like a divorce. What do you do when you have to go through a divorce and you have to close that chapter and then maybe begin to open a new chapter? How do you do it in the right way? And how do you do it and honor the chapters that you've had?
That could be a very valuable chapter to read for a law firm owner who has a partner, and you know that you're well past the point of that partnership.
Of course.
I don't know
like Seth Bader and Louis Scott.
I was about to say, I don't know why they parted ways, but part ways they did. And it's been a couple of years. And I don't know Seth, but I know Luis, who's been on this podcast multiple times.
I can speak to that. I mean, I know exactly why. Is Luis had a vision for starting the 8-figure firm and wanted to do something, and he was running it while he was building Bader Scott. And Seth Bader had a vision for what he wanted Bader Scott to be, and that was different from the way that Luis wanted to grow it. And they realized that Luis could go off and build something of his own separate, and Seth could go on and continue to build Bader Scott as he wanted to. So it just became they grew apart, which many marriages do.
Was it a happy divorce?
Yeah, it seemed to be fine. I mean, like, look, I mean, there's all like in every divorce, is any divorce happy? No. I mean, there's always tough parts, right? But it certainly wasn't like a conflict. They speak well of each other. You know, there's no ill will for sure.
That's amazing. One of the things that I believe I saw at when it used to be called Bader Scott is that they had their vivid vision on their website.
Yes.
Which is as uncommon as it gets for a law firm. I now understand where it came from.
Right. Yeah.
Explain to the folks who never read your book, which I highly recommend reading the book. There are so many amazing insights in that book. One of my favorites, obviously, is Vivid Vision. Another one, What to Do How to Grow When Things Are Slow. Coincidentally, chapter 11, like you do not want to get to chapter 11. It will explain how to avoid chapter 11 if things are really slowing down. But explain what vivid vision is and why it is so incredibly powerful.
So the idea is an idea that I learned from a Olympic coach. And I was meeting with this Olympic coach back in Vancouver, Canada, about 25 years ago. And he was talking about how high performance athletes visualize themselves performing the event. And these high performance athletes will literally play the event over and over and over in their mind, so that when they're performing the event, they can almost perform instinctually. Maybe it's a gymnast who's going to walk the floor of the gymnast routine and stop at each spot that she's going to do one of her tumbling routines. Or the downhill skier that closes their eyes and they see themselves skiing the entire downhill course, right? So the visualization tool is used in sport. And then we talked about a business that uses visualization every day, and it was home builders. You think about a home builder or a home renovation company, the homeowner is the CEO, right? I know what I want you to build. I know what I want it to look like. I know how much money I'm willing to spend, but I don't know how to do it. And the contractor is like the COO and the leadership team. The contractor understands the vision of what my home is going to look like, and they create the blueprints and the plans to make my vision come true. And as the homeowner, I sign off on the blueprints. The contractor signs off on my vision. We're in agreement. And then we hand the vision and the blueprints to the employees, the workers, and the workers can build my dream home without ever talking to me as the homeowner. And my dream home gets built without me having to know how to do electrical and plumbing and drywall and flooring. That is where the vivid vision concept really struck for me. So we created this concept of a 4 or 5 page description of what your company looks like, acts like, and feels like in the future. And then your team can figure out how to make that come true. And you can also craft a vivid vision for yourself as a person or for your relationship that you're in, right? So I have a vivid vision for me as Cameron Herold. My vivid vision for me describes every aspect of me. It describes how I am as a father, as a dad, as a partner, as a lover, as a friend, as a confidant, as a person walking through this universe, how I am with spirituality and fitness and my vacations. My business vivid vision talks about our marketing and my leadership team and my metrics and the dashboards and what my customers are saying, what my employees are writing about me. So that vivid vision concept becomes an anchor and an inspirational kind of future state that everybody helps figure out, make it come true. The problem with vision boards is a vision board is good for one person, but a picture says 1,000 words, right? If I was to show you a picture of the room that I'm sitting in, you might think that I'm describing, I don't know, the statue behind me on the table, but I really wanted to illustrate the light. But the whole picture is confusing because there's too many parts in that picture. But if you're looking at it as a vision board, you know that part of the picture that means something to you. And so vision boards are a very powerful tool for one person. The vivid vision document is a powerful thing for the entire company because every sentence is a future state that your team can make come true.
I highly recommend the book, and I'll show the cover once again. I read this book 3 times in the last decade. I had it. You gave it to me just about a little over 10 years ago. I think it was October of 2015. And Cameron, you laid out the process of creating a vivid vision document for your business and what people should be participating in creating vivid vision. Having this document, which my partner and I do have, we created early on when I joined the team, was very helpful in growing the business. The part of double, which to those who are not familiar with the concept, it simply means increasing the speed with which you double your business by double. How do you grow the speed with which you grow the business? By 100%. And you talk about the concept that I talk about often on this podcast and with business owners like law firm owners. I talk about how if you grow at a rate of 25% per year, you're going to double your business every 3 years. And it reduces the anxiety of thinking like somebody else 2x'd it in 1 year, 5x'd it in 1 year. No, it's just 25%, very manageable speed. Every 3 years, your business is going to double. Before we joined this podcast, I actually ran the compounded annual growth rate of our business. I joined it 8 years ago, and I'm proud to say that it's been 28 years on average over 8 years. So it's 6 times larger, a little more than 6 times larger than when I joined in 2018. And this is, again, your teachings from the book were fundamental. I read the book for the first time 3 years before I bought into this business. And my goal was to at least average 25% per year because it's a manageable speed and it simplifies things and it calms down the anxiety. And getting from when we just started was a tiny business, a little over $1 million in revenue, now well over $6 million in revenue, has been absolutely.
I love that. And by the way, just for anybody who's a complete math geek, it's 26% a year.
26% a year.
Because 25% a year gets you from 100 to 195, but 26 gets you from 100 to 200. And
close enough, but sure.
It's close enough, yeah.
Close enough. But
I'm glad you remember that because it's really not that complicated, right? 26% is not a huge stretch. When we were growing 1-800-GOT-JUNK, we doubled the revenue 6 years in a row. Mm-hmm. So we actually did 100% growth 6 consecutive years. That was crazy town.
Very hard, very, very taxing on all the people involved. I'm sure you had substantial turnover in the process because of, it had to be difficult.
We did, and we didn't. And let me explain that. So we did and we didn't. One of the things that I focused on doing was growing the skills of my people because I knew. So when I actually joined Brian at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, there were 3 things that I said we had to do. Number 1 was we had to raise our prices. So we raised our prices by 40% in the first month or 2 that I was there. And everybody's like, oh my God, we're going to go bankrupt. I'm like, you're going bankrupt anyway. So at least if we're going to go bankrupt, let's try and go because we're going to be profitable. Number 2 was I said we had to build slightly more than a business, slightly less than a religion. We had to get into that zone of a cult. And number 3 was we were going to leverage PR. But the thing that I did internally was I trained and certified every manager and every franchisee on some core leadership skills so that they could actually take on more. We could delegate more. I think so often people sit down and they go, oh, I have to do this project because I have no one to delegate it to. I always say pick someone, delegate it to them, and then coach and train that person so they can do it. But it's an excuse that I'm the only one that can do that. And so, yeah, what I always did was grew the skills of my people so the company didn't outgrow them. Because I didn't want to be doubling the company and then have to replace people again and double it again, replace people. So you have to grow the skills at the same rate as you're growing the company. And that was what happened to me was by the time we got to 100 million, I couldn't be the COO of a big corporate business. It just had outgrown me by that point. And I was the last person of the leadership team to get replaced. We replaced all 6 of the members of the leadership team over the 6 years. Some in year 2, some in year 3, some in year 4, 2 in year 5, and me in year 6.
What's the biggest regret business-wise, if there is one?
Not learning early enough in my career to delegate faster, being radically self-reliant, being somebody who could grind it out and work hard. I was often like the fly banging its head on the window and kind of ending up dead on the windowsill. I regret not stepping back and realizing that there was a shortcut if I could delegate and take the path of least resistance more. So I often worked too hard. And sometimes that was because I felt good from working, right? It had become my identity. But that would be my biggest regret.
Yeah. For many people, being busy is a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And it is probably the worst badge that you could ever wear proudly.
Completely.
Yeah. I've been there and done that for many, many years. And now every year, my goal and the goal of my business partner is to free up more time.
Yep. It's great.
We have an advisor who taught us that every day, most of his day is spent thinking. He's like, I earned the right. He has multiple businesses with 18,000 employees across them. He says, my workday starts at the beach. He lives nearby in Southeast Florida. Says, between 7 and 9, I just walk on the beach. He's like, this is my workday. I think. Just think. Thinking is hard. But doing, he said, most of the doing is delegated. I do very little. I do very, very little. I have few key meetings, and that's it.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why that entrepreneurs that tend to delegate more and delegate faster, or the kind of that lazy entrepreneur, that lazy lawyer that we spoke about, are probably the ones that can build a better business because they can get results through others, right? You can replicate yourself. If you're the only person that can do the work, then you're probably not thinking clearly. I'm sure there's other people that can do it. We're just not that special.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. Any biggest personal regrets that you don't mind sharing?
I guess understanding that vulnerability builds trust. I have an anxious attachment style, and
what does that mean?
So there's a couple of different attachment styles. One is an anxious style, which means you get nervous and you hold on because of nervousness. And if something's going wrong, you get more nervous. Another is an avoidant, a person that runs away from conflict. They run away from fear. They run away from problems. I definitely don't run away from it, but I get nervous. So I think I would rather be more open and vulnerable with my partner. I've done a good job with my kids over the years, and probably even being more open and vulnerable with friends. I didn't understand that I could be vulnerable and talk about my struggles and my pains and my insecurities and my worries. I didn't realize until probably my mid-40s that everybody was struggling. I was very unaware of the human condition. I was very unaware of the reality of life. I think I was just in this bubble of probably working and playing and very unaware of humans. And I wish I'd understood that earlier.
Everyone struggles. I love that. I have one of the stark examples in my life is I have a good friend who made it big financially early. Before he turned 35, he was worth 9 figures. He and I had the conversation about this a few years later, before we reached the age of 40. And he told me the funny thing is that once I made all this money, I realized that I solved one problem, the money problem. Everything else was still there, and then some. So everyone struggles.
It's because we lose sight of that, right? I got a tattoo last November. It's in Hindi, but it's the Ram Dass quote, and it says "walking each other home," and it's just a reminder that we are just walking each other home, right? We are just taking care of each other on this journey. The death rate is still 100%.
So true. It's one of the, if I remember correctly, off of your very publicly shared bucket list, it's one of the 2 tattoos that you got. You got 3 now. Got on your bucket list. It stood out. It said, get a tattoo.
Yes, I do have on my bucket list to get a larger tattoo. I have a whole list of other tattoos I'm going to be getting as well. Yeah. I have my boy's birthday on my left arm, and then I have my wife's nickname on my shoulder.
That's awesome. Cameron, I wanted to do this for the past decade. It's been great having you on. Thank you so much for sharing so much life wisdom, business wisdom, definitely, but life wisdom, incredible. Just thank you.
Sasha, you're so welcome. Wonderful to see you again as well. Thank you for having me.